Welcome to the BWI Live Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We are here talking about the Nittany Lions winning 63-0 over UMass, but are we really talking about that? We're going to talk about that. We're going to discuss some of the flavors of the game today. I put out a tweet, I think it was like in the middle of the second quarter, asking, was this a slow start by the Penn State offense? And it is about 50-50. Let me look up. I need to look up the answer to that. What was the answer by the people? No. 53%, though. 46% of people said that was a slow start by the team. It did not continue. Shortly after that, they scored on, I think, every single drive until the game was over, or functionally over. Let me look at that quickly and give you that fact as well. Yeah, they scored on every single drive, except for the last one where they ended the game. So Penn State football... and they were also on a scoring drive, by the way, near the red zone before the fumble by Trey Wallace. So they take care of business. They almost score on every single drive. And they win 63-0 over UMass. We're going to be talking to you in the chat today, and I appreciate all the people that are here. I told everyone on Thursday and Friday, back on Wednesday, Tuesday, hey, just stop by for about 5 minutes. Like, just give your friend T. Frank 5 minutes of your time after the game. I know people are going to be moving on in the middle of the third quarter because this is going to be the way the game went. They scored 21 points in the second quarter, and that kind of sealed the deal. But I appreciate everyone who's here right now. We're going to talk to you in the chat today. If you want to drop something in, the tip jar is open. Always appreciate that. I'll be getting to your questions and talking about things from this game today. So this is a very interesting... efficient game, and I have to do the final stats here about Drew Allar. His final completion percentage with his buddy Trey Wallace back in the lineup. 69% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, rounded up to 70. A very good game. Couple throwaways, couple drops from him. There's something that I was going to write about at the end of the week, and it was Trey Wallace's effect on this offense, and what can we learn from the splits of him being in the game and not being in the game? And the problem was it aligned directly with the Big Ten schedule starting, and he missed 3 Big Ten games. So can you really glean something from Delaware and West Virginia, and then you play the teams that are for real on your schedule, and then he comes back for UMass? So it's still an open question, but here are the numbers that I was looking at from an efficiency standpoint from Drew Allar. He had a 90% completion percentage, adjusted completion percentage in the first 2 games. It dropped down into the 70s once Trey Wallace wasn't in the lineup. Again, it was against Big Ten teams, step up in competition, some good defenses. And then today, I imagine once all of the analytics and advanced stats are tallied, he's going to be closer to that 85-90% completion percentage. And you can kind of see the difference in the offense. Trey Wallace getting some of those critical touches that went to guys that maybe weren't sure about what they're doing in the lineup, maybe weren't sure about their hands or their assignment. A lot of guys were sure today. Not a lot of sure hands, I'll say. Some drops in the rain. That's a bit of a concern for Penn State football. A couple touchdowns essentially were dropped by the receivers in the rain. Tyler Warren had a beautiful touchdown that would have been a really good catch, and that would have been a big play. But we're not even splitting hairs. We're splitting atoms, talking about criticisms or things that didn't go right or things that weren't perfect in a 63-0 win. Larry jumping in early. He says, Wallace back, efficient pass game. Been saying it for weeks. No wide receiver communication. Again, none. Daequan is a dude and completely undervalued. I should have just started with you, Larry. I saw out of the corner of my eye, I saw your comment, and I didn't get to it quite yet. But yeah, you said it, I think, more succinctly than I did. Trey Wallace is back, and I'm excited to see him against Big Ten competition. The biggest of Big Ten competition coming up next week. But Penn State put everything on tape now. They can grind the ball out. They got explosive runs in this game. They've gotten explosive runs in the past. Now they have the middle of the field with their tight ends back. They have hit all the things. They've hit all the bingo. This was what we wanted to see in this game. The thing I talked about on Friday, 5 things on Friday, is this is a defense that is ready to give you big plays if you take them, and especially down the middle of the football field. And in the third quarter, they finally got to it where they got the look they wanted. Cover 2 with linebacker that for some reason decided he wasn't going to cover his deep hole in the Tampa 2 coverage. And then Theo Johnson, who's one of the more athletic tight ends in all of football, NFL or otherwise, runs for an easy touchdown. So, again, UMass, but also they did it. Let's be happy, says Stephen Light. I think that's a fair thing to say. And Stephen, I'm gonna say here's I think this is just an entertainment thing where I have to push and pull with you guys, and you know, you guys are all happy, and Stephen and Larry, they're talking about all the things that are right, and Trey Wallace is back, and it's great. I don't know that Drew Allar was super accurate on his deep balls. Now, the ones at Keandre Lambert-Smith, where there was contact and they threw the flag on a couple of them and they didn't throw it on one of them, I understand the timing being disrupted there and those being a little bit off. But I'm talking about there was a couple that... How about this one? Let me ask you this in the chat. Throw it in the chat. Was that a drop or was that a miss to Trey Wallace early on that wheel route from the slot where it was just outside his hands? Didn't quite catch it, because I don't have a firm opinion on that one. But it's just one of those things where a little rusty. The deep passing game still is, I mean, we saw it today, but there was some meat left on the bone there, which means there's still development, there's still progress for this group to achieve if they can do it next week. Now, the difference is, coming up next week, it's not a defense that's going to give you big plays. This defense, by design, playing a lot of cover one, playing a lot of open field looks, they give you those explosive plays if you can go take them. Ohio State plays 3 safeties. They absolutely are not giving you those explosive plays. So we're not really going to focus on that in the matchup next week, but it is interesting to know that that they have it in them. So if there's a mistake, if there's a busted coverage, they absolutely can take advantage of it. And you saw that over the last couple of weeks. Zach says, do you think Drew's accuracy could possibly be from the weather? Maybe. I talked to Aeneas about this on the tailgate show. We were talking about the effect of weather on people, and I think it's person to person. Let me say this. Come NFL draft time, if the weather is affecting Drew Allar, then what is the point of the big hands, big arm, throwing the football 60, 70 yards? Like, what's the point of that? So it shouldn't. I don't think it should affect him. I think it's just a little bit of touch and timing, truthfully. And being precise on all of those things, I think that's going to be really important coming up next week. But the running game, 37 carries, it's hard to believe. I look down and I look at that, and 37 carries, 246 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Obviously, a lot of garbage time has a lot to do with that, but Nick Singleton leading the charge, 15 carries, 79 yards, 5.3 yards per touch. That was really, I think his final drive was the best he's looked in a while in terms of decisiveness, downhill without being too aggressive. I thought that was a great balance that he struck right before. And then, of course, that's the thing. On that drive, one of the long touchdowns takes away what might have been a capper for him getting into the end zone. So this is a really good offense. Another thing I was focusing on today, I was trying to figure out and go a little bit deeper in my in-game analysis of what's Penn State doing and how are they attacking, and trying to, now that Trey Wallace is back, how are they playing? And they flip between 11 and 12 personnel fluidly. There's absolutely no tells just from looking at it on first blush. I'd have to see, going back to maybe what plays or whatever they're running out of those, but they run everything out of every personnel group. They run it out of a bunch of different formations. They have a bunch of counters to their base plays that they show, so that they have a really balanced offense. And it comes down to the fact that the offensive line today especially was really impressive, as you would hope, against UMass. We got a conversation in the chat. I apologize. I'm trying to talk to you guys and try to read the chat as well. Want to get to what you guys are talking about in the chat, but just kind of recapping this game before we get to Ohio State, because everyone is talking about Ohio State. Fleming and Ibuka are dangerous to focus our energy on Harrison. If Ibuka is healthy, that's going to be a big part of that. Should we just flip to talking about that game? I don't know. 408 yards from the Penn State offense, 3 touchdowns, 70% completion percentage. It was everything you want. The Penn State defense, historically dominant at this point, right? 63-0, another shutout. Curtis Jacobs leads the team with 5 tackles. 2.5 sacks from Adisa Isaac. Cam Miller had 2 sacks. That doesn't even count Chop Robinson, who had 2 sacks. Everyone got theirs today. It was a really impressive performance. And what was it? One rushing yard in this game at halftime. I have to give UMass credit. They got more yards than Iowa did. 109 yards in this game, 45 pass yards, 64 rushing yards there at the end. So the team, it's a really good football team. And that's talking about today, the deep passing game, completing on this is another thing. I'll get on this here too. When you want to have an accurate quarterback, James Franklin talked about this in the summer, where you have the ability with arm strength and accuracy to create yards after the catch. So 162 yards passing, 110 of those came after the catch. They were doing their job in letting the receivers run. Keandre Lambert-Smith with 37. Theo Johnson had 40. Trey Wallace had 24 yards after the catch. So a lot of long pass plays today and also yards after the catch. So everything has fallen in place. I'd say the major thing as well is they got out of this game perceivably, what we saw, healthy. Now, the whole J.B. Nelson thing, had no idea what happened to him last week. So if somebody was carted off and we didn't see it, I didn't see it. I didn't see it in any of the reporting I saw. So Penn State getting out of this game healthy, heading into the next game against Ohio State. I think that's going to be a big thing, though, is the offensive line and how they progress with Vega in the lineup, because it's been good, but there's some youth there. And Ohio State's defensive tackles are good. Number 58, I haven't learned his name yet. Number 58's an NFL player. He's an NFL one technique. So they have got a nose tackle that's going to cause Penn State some problems. The youth on the interior, Vega, and then, if anyone else has to play, maybe some inexperience on the interior if they bring in a veteran in that spot. So that's the major thing on offense that I'd be looking at, because check boxes down the list for Penn State and for James Franklin. Their style of play, methodical still in this game, and keeping the ball away from the explosive offense from Ohio State against a defense that wants to keep a lid on things. This is a good matchup for Penn State. This is a good matchup for them to be able to do the things they do and that they want to do against a talented team. The difference is that team is talented. That defense is a good defense, and it's going to be a matchup of strength versus strength in terms of Ohio State and the way they play. They are dictating the terms with a couple of big, strong defensive linemen, and then they're playing soft coverages behind it. A little bit like Iowa. Penn State, they're a methodical team. They're a safe team. They're a smart team led by Drew Allar, who's done an excellent job of being efficient. No 10-play drives here, but 8-7-7, 8-7-7, 8-5-3-0-9. Right? So that they're still, even in this game, methodical in that they had very few one-play drives for 70 yards and a touchdown. So that level of efficiency, that should carry over into a game against a team that wants you to be efficient. Larry's back. He's got a conversation. OSU defense this year is more like Iowa. They're not. Larry, we're saying the same things over and over again. This is awesome. I love how smart the fans of this show are. They're not blitzing as much. Key next week. The Penn State defensive line versus the OSU offensive line. This game has to be won by defensive ends for years. I think that's a really good point. And this is the year Penn State has the better defensive ends. If you watch the pregame show, Aeneas pulled no punches. This is a better defensive line for Penn State than Ohio State's offensive line. So you go in feeling very good, and you're healthy, and your defenders got so few snaps today. Again, in the first half, 3 and out to start the game. Then you got 2 drives of 10 plays, and we're basically at halftime with 15, 20 snaps. So a lot of the snaps that came in this game, a lot of the yards that came in this game, really on the final drive from UMass. So Penn State gets through yet another game without a whole lot of wear and tear on the bodies of their defensive line. And by the way, can I just say it's ridiculous and maybe a little bit unfair that Keziah Izzard and Amin Vanover are out there on the final drive? Like, that's how deep the Penn State defensive line is. Both of those guys One of them was a projected starter before the season in Keziah Izzard. The other one is a starting level defensive end who played in the first half. So Penn State they're so deep they're trotting out quasi-starters in the fourth quarter. That is not common, especially on the defensive line. So I know we talk about not having massive 325-pound defensive tackles, but they've got a lot of good defensive tackles. Jordan Vandenberg made a play today. Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac. Zariah Fisher continues to flash as an athletic defensive end that can run in space and track down guys in the open field. And the secondary didn't have a whole lot to do today. 14 attempts got out of Tyshawn Pumacon's hand, right? 14 attempts. How many of those do you think were on target? They hit one, right? And that was what we talked about coming into this game is they tailor the offense to get the ball out of his hands in some really formulaic designed reads. And when they don't, they struggle. I thought he would throw the ball to the other team more. He did not do that in this game. However, what he did do was take how many sacks? Let me look this up quickly because I don't have a number on it. 6 sacks in the game. They didn't get any in the second half. So this is going to be a complete defense versus an offense for Ohio State that I haven't seen any of the film today, but got back on track against Purdue, but not crisp through the first part of the season so far. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on Kyle McCord. Not every Ohio State quarterback has performed well under pressure. I mean, you can even say that was the C.J. Stroud's weakness when he was an NFL draft pick. Now, he's done pretty well in the NFL so far. He did well at times. Justin Fields obviously had the escape hatch of he could run whenever he wanted. And you go back all the way to some of their other quarterbacks. They've struggled under pressure, but they've never gotten all that much pressure. Do they get pressure next week? David in here, David's going to bring up the explosive play. Didn't get to see the game much. Did we hit the explosive plays, T. Frank? Are we good at football? Yes, David, they hit the explosive plays today. They did what they were supposed to do in this game. And that's a big thing. Because, again, it wasn't going to be a big deal in the rain against UMass. If you don't want to show stuff, that's fine. If you don't want to put things on film for Ohio State. But that was a defense you were supposed to get those opportunities, and they did, and they made them happen in a couple of different ways. They caught the ball and ran, got into the open field. They were more athletic. Trey Wallace showed, yes, he still has legs that work very well, and he's fast and explosive. And then they were able to get big plays in the passing game. So all of that coming together before the showdown next week against Ohio State. Do you have tickets to the game? Are you going to go on the road? Do you want to go see the game? Or maybe maybe after the season, maybe you're saving your acorns for after football season and you want to see a show. Download the Game Time app. Game Time is a new sponsor here on the BWI Live Postgame Show. They're an app that helps you get tickets even after the game has started. And what I love about Game Time and the app that I've used so far when I've been able to play around with it and look at some things is it helps you find good stuff to go to and watch live. I'm here in T. Frank's film room all the time. I don't know a whole lot about what's going on in the world. I need some help. Where are the cool places to go? So if the wife and I want to go see a show in Pittsburgh, they have a great regional ability for you to look at, what are the shows in your area, and then in your out from there in your region. If you want to, you live in State College, and, there's great stuff at the Eisenhower Auditorium, the Bryce Jordan Center, but what if you want to see a comedy show? You want to go see some stand-up live in Pittsburgh or something like that. They can help you find that, and it can help you get a great deal on the tickets as well. And that's the part that you're going to be super interested in, is that they give you a good deal on the tickets. So you want to download the Game Time app. Thanks to our partner Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code BWI for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, and go to gametime.co to check out more. Use the promo code BWI for 20% off. Maybe you're going out to Columbus. You can check out tickets there. And get that deal the closer and closer you get. If you're one of those people that likes to play the game, you can check them out. And if you're close to the time of game day, you're in Columbus, see if you can get some good tickets. They'll get you a good deal. And you got the promo code from BWI on your first purchase. It's a big game. It's a big week. Might as well go big with Game Time. Appreciate them here as a sponsor. So what's going on in the chat? What are your thoughts on this game? What are your thoughts on What are your thoughts on... I'm sorry, I'm very distracted by Blue Jay. Apparently there's somebody's wedding going on right now. Somebody's getting married. Somebody's sister's getting married. And Frack the Hunter, I'm only here because you begged, T. Frank. Thank you. I will beg to make this show be good. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Somebody's wedding is going on right now. I guess if there was one weekend to do it, I guess it would be the UMass game. But I appreciate everyone being here, even though you're at your sister's wedding. So that's great. What else we got here? The only show that matters is the PSU football show. Well, John, you're here again. We had our conversation on Friday about explosive plays. We're talking about it again. They got another one of your grinded out victories. I would still consider that a grind out victory. So Penn State matching up with Ohio State coming up next week. This is the game to me that defines the season. I don't want to say that Penn State can't beat Michigan later in the year because, first off, I haven't really dug into all of the players on the Michigan side, offense and defense. They seem like they're a machine this year. Ohio State seems like the team that is down a little bit, new quarterback, a little bit vulnerable. So win that game. And obviously win the rest of your games. Maryland and Rutgers actually look good, sort of, decent, for the first time in a while. So you beat Ohio State. You have to take care of those games as well, right? So if you beat Ohio State, you take care of those games, you're 11-1 against one of the toughest divisions in all of football. Nobody's going to have a resume that has both Ohio State and Michigan on it, right? That's going to be in the same position. If it's a three-way tie, I don't know. Penn State is going to, if they have 11 victories, they beat Ohio State, it takes the pressure off that game in Happy Valley in November. It's there for the taking, it feels like, this year. So this is the opportunity to go and seize it. And the best way that things have laid out for James Franklin, from a schedule standpoint, from a talent standpoint, personnel standpoint, this is the game where they've got to be the team that wins. And let's just kind of roll it through, right? Penn State has a top 5 to 10 offensive tackle. Usually that's on the other side of the field. Penn State has a potential first-round defensive end. They have two guys that I think could be drafted in the top 60 picks, maybe 64 picks. They got a guy coming up behind those guys that could be a top first-round pick. That sounds a lot like Ohio State typically every year. Defensive tackles, they're deep. They're flexible in the body types they can play. They're aggressive. Abdul Carter, great linebacker. And then the corners, Penn State has a potential first-round corner. That's usually on the other side of the ball. And, of course, the quarterbacks, you look at these two guys, and just off the top, it seems like Drew Allar right now, despite not having the numbers, 300 yards passing hasn't happened since the first game of the season, I think. I don't think there was another game where he got 300 yards. 3 touchdowns today, being incredibly efficient with the football, making great decisions. You look at the advanced metrics, he's very, very, very good. Kyle McCord, not so much. Still good. Not in that very, very good. So maybe neither of these quarterbacks are as good right now as J.J. McCarthy is. But if you were to make a pecking order, I'm putting Drew Allar right now second. And once again, you rarely go, or Penn State has not typically gone into the game against Ohio State where they have the better quarterback. So all of these things are setting up that you can win that game. Go win it. That's Penn State has this. All of this has been about that. They made the comment about that at the beginning of the show. The final checklist, the final test exam before you go and play Ohio State next week. T. Frank, what is your most impressive part of PSU's game at this point? What surprises you? What surprises me, I think, is the lack of information about the secondary. Just that they have been so dominant up front that we all know they're good, right? But Kalen King isn't generating a whole lot of buzz. As I saw a draft, or way too early mock draft, right? And he's kind of fallen out as the guy in vogue as a corner because he hasn't had a whole lot to do this year. There hasn't been a matchup, a showdown. There hasn't been a good receiver with a good quarterback that can actually hold up and target him in coverage so he can make some of those plays. I'd say, talking myself into the point, Daequan Hardy has been a star this year, not just today in this game. And I don't know how I brushed by that 2 punt returns in a game for a touchdown. It's the thing I always do. It's the obvious thing. You saw it. I saw it. There's no analysis there. He just got that punt return for 2 punt returns for a touchdown. And as a corner, as a slot corner, every single time he's targeted, chances are he's running the route for the receiver, where he's inside the hip pocket of that receiver and he's cutting off the angle to the football because he has done such a great job and he's so athletic and he's so fast. I'm going to be super interested to see how he plays next week against Ohio State, because all of their receivers are really big. You know, Julian Fleming is 6'4", Marvin Harrison's 6'4", I think Mekabuka is 6'2", physical. He might be like 210 if he's healthy. That's going to be a super interesting matchup. If Zero, and I apologize, I don't know his name yet either, if he's in the slot, I think that's kind of a Daequan Hardy advantage. Otherwise, how are they moving and motioning and trying to get Daequan Hardy? Are they trying to get Marvin Harrison on somebody in the slot? Most impressive part of Penn State's game at this point is probably the defensive ends. I don't know how you can go any farther than the defensive line. Their progress from week 1 to week 6 has been why this team has been so dominant. Why this team is winning 63-0, and they have these sleepy starts on offense that turn into snowball effects on the defensive side of the football. You can't move past 6 sacks in the first half, and allowing 100 yards in this game and 70 yards in a different game. That's got to be the most impressive part of this team. I really want to say the offensive line, because quietly in the background, they're not as impressive as the defensive line. But on offense, I think that they're the core of what Penn State is doing. They're getting good push. They're getting good movement. They're trying to work through some of those things in the run game to create consistent chunk plays, not even the explosive 70-yard ones or 65, 40, whatever, however long it is to the goal line. But getting those 9, 10-yard runs and just getting the running back to the second level and letting him make a move. Oh, that's the thing I wanted to talk about today. Kaytron Allen is a tank. The way he played today, his yards after contact were silly. He was barely in the game, it felt like. 9 carries for 68 yards, 7.6 yards per rush. And I think 6 of those yards were him just running with dudes on his back. That was the Kaytron Allen we saw last year. Not necessarily physical and running like that, but breaking tackles and getting yards after the catch, being incredibly difficult to tackle. He was that guy today, and it was good to see him get back after missing the second half of the Northwestern game. I think they're going to have to rely on him next week. Nick Singleton, he looks good, right? So this is 15 carries, 79 yards. Repeating, I'm just puking stats at you about this game because what else is there to do? I'm not diagnosing what they were trying to do on offense, because what they did is they ran inside zone. They ran inside zone. They ran outside zone. They ran their basic offense. They ran their base plays, and it worked. He looked physical and strong, Singleton did, but Kaytron Allen provides that spark right now, and that's right now. So they're going to need some of that, making guys miss and churning out some extra yards. That's going to be something that they have to do next week. That's I think the balance next week is going to be very important, because Ohio State has a good defensive line. That was something I wanted to know. That's why I took an early look at it. So first off, we'd have something to talk about here, because nobody wants to talk about UMass. I don't think anyone wants to talk about UMass at this point. They have a good defensive line. So not all the way through, not all 6 guys are at the same level. But if you have enough disruptive guys on the defensive line, you can start to gum up a run game. So somebody's going to have to play above what they've done so far to make that even. I think if there's one area that Ohio State has a distinct advantage, it will be in between the tackles against JT Tuimoloau and the defensive line up front. Penn State's offensive line is good. They've gotten good push. I think that they will fight, but I don't know they have a pure advantage when it comes to the run game. Pass protectors, obviously you feel fine about Olu. Caden Wallace has played well. He's given you no reason to think that he's going to be a massive problem. And if there is a problem with Tuimoloau on that side, I think you can still chip and help and keep one side of the football and just that way. You don't have to fully bring in 7 guys and pass protect and only run 2 in routes. I think you can chip and you can help Wallace because he has bridged that gap from not being a guy that can protect the blind side to, I mean, historically, he might be the best right tackle now this season that Penn State's had under James Franklin. As far as performance, ability to play the run and the pass adequately well, we'll see if that continues against his biggest test. Blue Jay, I've been telling you the whole time. That's what we've been doing. Yes, we've been talking about Ohio State. I gave you a rundown of their offense. The defense, to Blue Jay's question here, and I apologize for people that are listening on the postgame show on the on replay, on the podcast. I'm bouncing all over the place, but Blue Jay says, have you reviewed Ohio State enough to know their weaknesses? They overall have a good defense. So their secondary is good. I don't feel like any of those guys are first-round picks. And Aeneas and I were watching film about of this side of the ball earlier this week, and that was his observation. I think it's correct, too. You got good safeties. They got guys that are physical. They do a couple of the things that have really frustrated Penn State's running game. So that Jay Sider talked about that this week, where a lot of defenses now are playing either with 3 safeties or they're playing this quarters-style system where they keep a safety over the middle of the box. So usually when you're adding safeties, you're adding on the sides, as I'm using my hands here to show you. Like, the tackles are here and the safeties come down at angles. A lot of what teams are doing now is they're dropping a safety down from the middle, and it's really hard to find that guy as a run blocker. And this has been, I think, the biggest frustration for Penn State is even today this happened. Nick Singleton read the run play correctly. There is a zone run to the right, and UMass throws bodies at the right side to take away the front side of the run. So he cuts off of Vega Ioane's backside. And he hits upfield, and there's a safety. So you turn your head, and there's a safety. It's just coming straight down. It's adding late, and it's a hard... Either you have to run a tight end or somebody up there or bring a receiver from a different position. But if you do that, then you're adding in corners in the run game as well. So it's just a very hard way. It's not an easy angle to get a blocker to that guy. Also, it is the running back's job to make a safety miss. And what teams are doing is they're just bringing that safety closer to the line of scrimmage and forcing the issue. So that's been a big thing with the run game this year. And Ohio State can do that really well because they play 3 safeties. They can play that guy as a pure Sam linebacker. They can add guys late onto the backside in zone blitzes, or they can just have a guy hanging out at the top of the box and add in late. And that's why they've been a hard team to run against, because if you're standing 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage, you can run either way at a proper angle to corral all of these things. Larry's back with another question or comment here. Penn State, people tend to forget Penn State was down to its 3rd offensive lineman last year. Caden Wallace was out. I forget his name that was there. Penn State held up well. Olu was out at the end of the game. Larry is the part I would correct. Only in the final 6 minutes, which also was the way the game dissolved. Yeah, it was Bryce Effner on an island against JT Tulamoliau in that game. So, Penn State versus Ohio State has started quickly, basically at the final gun here. Let's recap what we saw from Penn State. Their defense is really good. We've seen the next evolution from the defensive tackles as well. And this is something that I do believe they're going to be able to do occasionally against Ohio State, which is be more athletic than the guys across from them and get some tackles for a loss, or at least get into the backfield and cause some problems for the Ohio State running backs. I don't know what the situation is with Mayan Williams. I haven't seen him in the box score when I looked today. I didn't look closely, but I haven't seen him in the box score. He hasn't been getting as much run, literally. And then Travion Henderson, if he's healthy, he's not healthy. That's a big wild card. But Penn State's been able to get into the backfield from the defensive tackle position specifically and the defensive line overall to create tackles for loss. Getting 14 defensive tackles for loss is a huge thing. You're creating more negative plays than the team is getting positive plays, and you're putting teams in obvious passing situations. If Penn State can continually put Ohio State in obvious passing situations next week, they're going to have their best chance to beat this team in a very long time. The right tackle, number 70, he is closer to the guys they've seen so far than the Ohio State tackles that they've seen previously. So Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, it doesn't even matter. blitzing, right? This team blitzes from the slot corner, from safety, from regular corner. They blitz from everywhere. So the ability to get pressure on Kyle McCord is a real intangible thing, especially up front. Center is also not super strong and stout in pass protection, not a great run blocker. And I think if you're Zane Durant, this is an opportunity to put yourself on the map, right? Big game, breakout performance potential, because it's set up for him and Akeem Beamon and Devon Ellis to cause havoc, because these, while they're athletic, I don't know that other than Donovan Jackson, the left guard, and one of the few names I actually know, by the way, still learning the names, he's probably, Donovan Jackson's probably their one very well-rounded offensive lineman. The left tackle is good. Maybe not as good in run blocking as he is in pass protection, but it's going to be an advantage up front for Penn State if they can keep that team in long-distance passing situations. There's always the opportunity for Marvin Harrison Jr. to just override the situation and get win in one-on-one or find an open hole in the zone. That is entirely possible. But Penn State will have the advantage with pass rush, and they can put this offense in those situations. And then it becomes the Penn State offense. They cannot throw out a bunch of clunkers, because this is the thing about the Penn State defense is we've seen them be dominant. We have seen them be historically good. But if you're asking them to make the Ohio State offense with top 5 pick Marvin Harrison Jr., potential first-round pick Emeka Ibuka, potential drafted NFL receiver Julian Fleming, and Cade Stover, who's a good receiving tight end, like they've got 4 dangerous pass options. Somebody's going to lose somewhere at some point. They're not going to shut out Ohio State. They're not going to do what they did to Iowa and Northwestern. That's a good side of the ball. So you can't put the pressure on them to be elite like they have been. You have to have complementary football next week means that the Penn State offense has to get yards and points early in the game so that this does not become a chase from behind situation. Because what they've done so far this year really well, even when they start slow, the defense has helped them out. And they've been able to put their offense in situations where they're not exposing Caden Wallace to pass blocking for 3 full seconds, and Drew Allar has to do a full progression to the backside. They've done it occasionally, but it's not every play. And they're not trying to dig out of every 3rd and long. So if you've got any questions about what you think is coming up, let me know. If you want to attack a different angle of this, I'm going to try. The problem is, like, I grew up in radio. So dead air is horrible. And I don't want to stop talking long enough to read some of your questions to get them on air. I have to do a little bit of editing before they get on the show, so I apologize. I try not to and ah. Zach asks, confidence level going into Columbus. I would, if I'm Penn State, and I don't want to answer my confidence level because it doesn't matter. Like I'm not a fan. I don't work for the team. If I'm Penn State, I think from the analysis, this is a team that you should be able to beat. So confidence would be high. I think high is the right word to say. Most confident you've been in a long time. I think, yeah. Zach says, I'll be honest, feel more confident going into Columbus this year than I did in 2017. Yeah. Agreed. I mean, this is the game where Penn State makes the college football playoff or they don't make the college football playoff. The odds to me are much higher. Obviously, getting the pivotal win early in the season is always the point, right? The earlier you get these big wins, that matters. But the way everything breaks down, and if they go undefeated, you get Michigan at home, and that's a big thing. So I don't want to discredit the opportunity to beat Michigan at home, because I think that Michigan as well is going to see a defense and a team like they haven't seen in a while. And I think Manny Diaz has, I don't want to say developed, but I think he learned some stuff from that game against Michigan last year. Will preempt some of the issues that happened. Plus, it's a better team this year. Penn State's defense, as good as they were last year, this one looks better. So that, I think, is going to be a big thing, is getting them at home, getting a second crack at that from the Penn State defensive perspective. That's a huge thing. Being at home and that offense being with the crowd at Beaver Stadium, that is going to be a part of the conversation as well. But it doesn't matter. And I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter. You got to beat Ohio State first. And that's the game that feels attainable. I think this is the best opportunity they've had to make the college football playoffs since 2016. When you lose early to Pitt, and that game costs you in the end. But this team, while different, has the consistency in scoring that we haven't seen so far this year. And here's another question. Like, I hate doing this. I hate doing this quite a bit. But how do you gauge the teams they've played versus their output? You can only play who's on their schedule, and they have throttled the last 4 teams. They forced every single quarterback to the bench this year. They forced every single quarterback to the bench this year. That's amazing. But they're also not playing good quarterbacks. So how do you gauge the level of dominance, and where does it fall on the scale of what's next for this team when they face teams on their level? You can only dominate the teams in front of you, and they've done that. But this offense has consistently scored, and Drew Allar, while not the guy maybe we thought off, it's funny. We did the same thing with Sean Clifford, didn't we? He threw a couple of passes, maybe 7 passes, and they were all explosive plays down the field, hitting DeAndre Tompkins in the hands in a bowl game, hitting Daniel George for a 91-yard touchdown or whatever it was at Beaver Stadium. And we thought he was going to be this hyper-accurate, bombs-away quarterback, the guy that can stretch the field vertically and do everything. Then we learned more about Sean Clifford over the next 4 years, right? And Drew Allar comes in, and he throws one great 7 route, one, out route, corner route to Tyler Warren. We see the stuff against Ohio, and we think, here's the next shot king. And turns out he's a dependable, safe. He's more of a Toyota. But if you have a Toyota with a battering ram on the front, you can get through the Derby. And I think that's what this offense kind of is. He's ultra dependable. He makes good decisions. I think he gets a little too excited at times when he sees what he wants, and he just needs to trust his training, let his footwork take over, and not try to force and rush things. That's where I think some of the inaccuracies on those plays a little bit farther down the field. He just needs to, because a lot of the times it's coming out of a play fake, or it's coming out of either he's resetting his feet to the next throw. He just needs to, on those quick strike plays, relax and let it happen. If there's one thing that I don't like from him that I've seen, and again, it happened in this game, that completion to Tyler Warren on the slant for a first down, you got to not drift into pressure. He has consistently, in every single game, once or twice, floated one way or the other, drifted in the pocket, and put his tackle in a bad position. There didn't need to be pressure on that play. Those are the small little details against Ohio State that are going to be an issue next week, because you can't get too close, because Olu is not going to be swallowing up maybe he is. Maybe he's going to be swallowing up literally every guy that he goes up against, every defensive end for the next 7 games. It's entirely possible. We saw him dominating in practice this week, and it was incredibly impressive because he was going up against, the Penn State defensive ends, the starters, Chop Robinson. Ben Shields, new name here on the show. Hey, Ben. Welcome to the show. Allar needs receivers that have speed and can get open in the open field. I think they have speed. Ben, my one problem that I've had, and this is a consistent thing with the receivers, is so Keandre Lambert-Smith got a lot of contact, a lot of physicality in this game. Here's the problem. This is college football. The refs don't care about pass interference, despite what you think from this game. You can grab everybody. Joey Porter Jr., the comment about him last year was he's too grabby. Every college corner is grabby because they don't call it the same way. So if that happens, win anyway. You've got to fight through that. You can't let that. That's where, if there's one thing I think this team needs from Trey Wallace is it's I don't care. I'm going to run anyway. I'm going to be so physical through the point of contact that I'm going to get open. You're going to grab me? That's cute. When you're grabbing, you're not running. And they need that. Somebody who can break away from the coverage and break away from the physicality and just get embarrassingly wide open. So I don't know that it's speed. I think it's actually power through contact from the receivers. And, getting Theo Johnson open over the middle was a huge thing. Again, I would not say that that's something you're going to see next week, because Ohio State parks a safety in the middle of the field for the entire game, and like it's just they're not fun. They're not fun. I hate watching that defense because it's good, So it causes a lot of confusing looks, and it keeps a lid on a lot of explosive plays. There's ways to beat it. There's things that Penn State can do, and last year you saw Sean Clifford get a lot of good plays, despite the fact that their offensive line was hanging on by a hangnail, like Larry talked about earlier. They were able to get a lot of explosive plays, a lot of chunk plays last year against that team. So there are things that Penn State can do against the secondary to get plays and to get guys open. But if it's going to be bombs way down the middle of the field or getting guys deep open, this defense is not going to allow you to have that. So, Chris, they aren't leaps and bounds, but they are a stronger team at this point, considering what they've lost and what they did to us last year. I don't know that we can stop that running game, and our offense isn't great. So I'm presuming, Chris, you had a meaty text there. So I thought there was going to be a little, I think you're talking about Michigan there. This offense is good for Penn State. I don't know how you can say it's a very good offense. It scored 63 points. It's put up consistent good points. Wes is here. He said, here because I didn't want you to be sad, T. Frank. You guys are the best. We've had a great crowd here. It was a little slow to start. Of course, it would be, just like the Penn State offense. People filed in a couple minutes later at the end of the UMass game, but you guys showed up. I told you I was going to be here. I was going to have a show for you against UMass, against Delaware, against McNeese State, maybe UAB, Tulane, doesn't matter. I'm going to be talking about the game, giving you some post-game comments, and I'm so happy you guys joined me. What else do you want to know about? Beach Wine Guy's here. He's got a comment. I'm going to throw it up here live. You're going to see me dancing on the edge. Watched an Ohio State podcast earlier this week. They talked about how their D has been eliminating the explosive plays but giving up dink and dunk, which I think plays into PSU's strength. Beach Wine Guy, welcome to the show. Yeah. I love this. This is when we're on a roll. We talked about this earlier, and I completely agree. That's what Penn State wants. They want you to, at least right now, their personality, their style of play, it matches up well because they're efficient. 70% completion percentage and 3 touchdowns from the quarterback. I don't know what his passer rating is, but it's probably pretty high. He didn't have to do a whole lot tonight because the ground game got things going, and they were able to just kind of mow like a slow-rolling destruction of UMass, and they were able to chunk some plays. They didn't get the 70-yard touchdown, but they chunked them to death today. They're going to get some of those plays next week. It's going to be, to me, Beach Wine Guy, again, along with Losi's Mustache, one of the best names here on the channel. Beach Wine Guy, if they can get the running game to be efficient next week, and I think that's the one area where this team could falter a little bit, if they can't get consistent running between the tackles, they might be in trouble. There's an easy path to victory for Ohio State, but there are more paths to victory for Penn State, I think. So, Beach One Guy coming in with a great point, and I love it that I'm not the only one that thought that. It feels good to know that we got some backup. Who are we putting these points up against? Our pass game is still a real question mark, says Chris. So that's again, how do you judge a schedule that is what it is, right? So I thought they did some good things against Illinois, where it was not a complete game. The passing attack, and I agree with you, was not as efficient as it could be in that game. But they still found a way to score points against a very good defense that played well in the secondary and has, first-round draft picks on the defensive line. And they found a way to run the ball against that team. They found a way to manufacture points against that team because you're right, it's not the 2017 Penn State offense with Saquon Barkley and, or the year before. Like, it's not those guys. But it has a flavor about it that we're not used to if you watch a lot of Penn State football. And that is, again, reliable, dependable. The things that Drew Allar does, they translate next week. He's going to continue to hit all of those underneath throws as long as his receivers catch him. The 9 to 10 yards, set up 2nd and 1. You're going to go for it on 4th down because this team has a really good 4th down package. They can throw out of short yardage situations. They can run out of them. The quarterback can run a little bit. We saw Drew Allar do a little bit of cover 1 and run today. One of the few plays that I thought was like a real mess was that 4th down play because you've got you got windows in the underneath coverage, and for some reason, and I don't know exactly why, but you had Liam Clifford and Keandre Lambert-Smith in the same window in underneath coverage. It was a little bit of a disaster there, so he just tuck it and run, and I think that, he's good enough to do that to get you out of some of those situations. It's going to have to be really like the most complete game from the offense. The most complete game you've seen from them, where they hit some of the big plays, they're consistent on the ground, and they can churn out those yards. But what you've seen is they've been able to find a flavor of victory each week. Let's see who else we got here. Rob says, I give a sneaky game ball to Singleton. He ran hard and sliced and diced UMass to death. I would go Katron Allen, but I know what you're saying. That the final drive, the last thing you remember was Nick Singleton going rage mode at the end of the runs, where he's picking his spot, he sees it, gets his shoulders square, gets downhill, and ran through a couple of guys for a really good play. So I agree with you. I think both guys, if you wanted to give it to both of them, I thought they were both very efficient on the ground. Ben back, he says, I like that Drew used the tight ends more this game. Maybe that's a preview of next week, I'm assuming, or what's coming up. So, of course, we will have more conversation about Penn State versus Ohio State starting Monday. For sure. We'll talk about it Monday. Tomorrow, over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, we're going to have T. Frank's Film Room. We're going to be dicing up some of this stuff. I'm going to... see, this is the thing. I'm going to have to get out my creative muscles and be like, okay, what's interesting about 63 to nothing? But we'll get it done. We'll have some of that stuff over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. It's a great time to sign up. Anytime's a great time to sign up. But if you want inside information going into the game of the year, subscribe right now. Make sure you get in and you become a year-long member where you can get some of these more in-depth thoughts and you can get them sooner. That's the other thing is, like, I talk about a lot of stuff that I talk about maybe in my articles or something else at the website, but you get it 4 days ago at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. And then we kind of talk about it here on the show. And there's some things that you only get on the message board where we have a conversation, behind the paywall. Some of the things that maybe don't get out into the real world. If you're here, having a good time, please like the video. But that's what I got here for today. I think that was a good recap of Ohio State, Penn State, which is coming up in 7 days. Oh, man. I'm already excited for the postgame show in 7 days because it's going to be a rager. This thing is going to burn down one way or another, and I'm going to be here for it with a lighter and a bottle with a rag coming out the top. So let's take the top off this show all week long. We got a big lead up into Penn State versus Ohio State coming up next week. Shows on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all coming up. You're going to be a part of it. I'm going to be a part of it. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Let's get to enjoying the rest of your weekend. Have a great one, and we'll talk to you on Monday.